Hey, I'm Bill DeYoung. It's the Catalyst Sessions yet again. I want to introduce you to somebody very special. I'm very happy he's here tonight. An actor and a singer, Eric Davis, arrived in the Bay Area in 1998. He worked with the Strass Center's resident theater company, and he taught music for 5 years at Blake High, a Tampa magnet school with a good solid theater program. In 2008, he co-founded freeFall Theater Company. Eric Davis is producing artistic director. He directs shows, he writes shows, he conceives shows, he molds shows, he builds sets, and he builds costumes, and he builds choreography. Eric Davis, he's going to argue with me, is freeFall theater. He'll be the first to admit that he's part of a much bigger gang of creatives, okay? But if you like what freeFall does, you pretty much have him to thank. So how's that? Eric Davis, hi, how are you?
Very kind of you. I want to fill in a couple of things from what you just said that I want to clarify a little bit.
Okay, you didn't teach at Blake, right?
I did teach at Blake, but I taught the musical theater program at Blake. So
you know what? I have Andrew Meacham to thank. Thanks, Andy. I read that one.
No, I'm very proud to have been part of the theater program there, and the music program there is really amazing. But with James Rayfield, who we still work with at freeFall, he and I were sort of the theater department there for a number of years. And Jim opened that program and taught it until his retirement. He's just like a local gem that everyone should know. And my title at freeFall actually is artistic director, and there's sort of a specific distinction there that a producing artistic director deals with both the art side and sort of the money side of things. And the way we're structured at freeFall, I have the great fortune of focusing just on the artistic side, and some other great collaborators, including Susan Haldeman, who's our managing director, and Cheryl Forchilli, who's our board president and has been our executive director, run the sort of money side. And so I'm very grateful for that. And
I told you he was going to
how we structured the theater on purpose.
What? I told the folks at home, maybe we should go back and start over. Hey, I want to get to all those. Perfect. I want to get to all those things because I have all those names written down here. But I wanted to get right to it. There's a lovely quote from Thoreau on your website, from Henry David Thoreau, that says, in effect, I'm only in hibernation. And when I come out, I will be more beautiful than ever. So the question, Eric, is where are you and the theater emotionally? I mean, we'll talk about finances in a minute and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But are you struggling with all this inertia? I mean, I know theater people don't do well with downtime.
Yeah, well, it's a challenging time, I think, for everybody, but we're very optimistic at freeFall. And like the page you're sort of quoting there, we're very optimistic about the time when we get to return, because I think after a time of dormancy like this, when artists come back, they come back with a lot of things to say and a lot of new ideas. And so I'm excited to see what the artists that we work with all the time have to say. We're actually reassessing our season. We haven't announced our season yet, and it's actually completely been overhauled because of different things we're looking for.
It's got to be frustrating.
Happening. And so we're commissioning a new play probably, and a bunch of exciting projects that we wouldn't have been doing necessarily had things sort of just gone on the way that they were going.
Is this turning lemons into lemonade, really? Is that we're going to do the best with what we can?
Well, I mean, I think there's an element of that maybe, but one thing that people who come to the theater or have been in some of our talkbacks might have heard me say before, because I probably say it too much, is that I think that directing is about conceiving yourself into a corner and then you direct yourself out of that corner. And I think that this is a little bit of that. So how do we take these challenges and how do we emerge from them sort of better than before, rather than letting them be obstacles?
It is frustrating, though, and again, you once told me that you're not a worrier, so I'm not going to dwell on this, but it is frustrating, I'm sure, to have no certainty, no target date, no definite, finite, that's it, we're coming back now. To not have that.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head right there. That's really the most challenging thing, and it is this sort of unknown, and we think through all these various scenarios of, well, what might happen if, but it, like everybody else is sort of having to do now, there's a lot of speculation. And so it will be really great when we sort of have a better sense of when we can very safely reopen. I mean, we don't want to reopen too soon or any of that. And there's, of course, huge debate in the country about that and what's best for all of that. And, but regardless of that debate, we've really been focusing from the beginning of this, like even when we were still open before we closed, on really getting to like, well, what is science saying? What are the real experts on this saying? And what is actually safe for our patrons and for our artists? And doing that dance is a big thing. And of course, we have all sorts of other considerations, like we're an equity theater. So whether equity will let us hire actors or not is a question. And so there's a lot of things to consider, and many of them are still very unknown.
I never even thought of that. I mean, equity, everybody has to pretty much abide by what the rules are, but I mean, equity could come out and say, no, not yet. Go, go hire people off the street if you have to do a show.
So we're just, in a holding pattern like everybody else, and sort of trying to do our best to keep things afloat and keep our audience reminded that we're going to be there for them when it's time to reopen. And and looking forward to that time.
Well, let me make one financial thing, because I noticed this on your website that several of your patrons have issued this challenge, right? That they'll match dollar for dollar all contributions up to $75,000.
Right.
Nice. Now the offer expires day after tomorrow.
Yeah, it does.
According to your website, May 30th. How's it going? How much dough you got in the
really
bag?
close to the goal, and I hope that we can hit it by then. But this whole thing has been it's been a very interesting thing, right? Because there's a lot of there are a lot of people and a lot of things that need money right now. So we really held back in the beginning of all of this for quite some time about whether we should even be asking for anything right now. We are a not-for-profit, like most of the professional arts institutions in the country, and we rely on fundraising to make the tickets affordable and to be able to do the work we do. And so really we were sort of like holding back, and we received a couple of several very generous gifts a few weeks into sort of our closure, and those patrons made those gifts sort of as a challenge to us that, this is what we want to give, and let's see if we can get other folks to step up to the plate with us. And so we really appreciate that challenge, and it looks like we're going to get quite a bit of that match.
So it's close.
We're very close, yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to remind everybody that the website is freefalltheaterre.com, and you can donate there. Let me throw this out. I have notes, but this isn't on them. And I hope this isn't too woo-woo for you or something, but what's different about freefall? And we're going to say only wonderful things about the other theater companies in town, because you all do that, and you should. It's beautiful. But what's special about freefall? I mean, most people will say it's you, but to your mind, what is maybe different about freefall? What sets it apart? Let's put it that way.
Well, what I hope sets freefall apart is sort of the ways in which we take risks, and the sort of eclectic nature of what we present at the theater. Like, and any one of our seasons is going to run the gamut of all sorts of theater from all sorts of times and genres. And I think that our patrons who come over and over, and to our subscribers, would attest to that. And I would say that not everything, because of that eclecticism, everything you see at freefall is not going to be to your taste, but you can rest assured that you're seeing like an incredibly high quality production of what you're seeing. And I love that every show we do is somebody's favorite show and somebody's least favorite show. And my email inbox would attest to that.
That's a badge of honor, isn't it? I mean, so it's always a thin line to walk, isn't it, between the old showstoppers and the old things that put butts in the seats, and the things that you find creatively challenging to you personally and to the company. And sometimes, isn't it true? Sometimes the thing you think is the greatest show you've ever done nobody comes to see. Doesn't that happen sometimes?
Yeah. Well, my very, very top favorite shows, and I won't tell you what those are because I have to love all of my children equally. I have to tell them that anyway. But definitely in that top tier of things that I'm proudest of artistically. Some of those are not commercial hits, and that and that is pretty typical, I think, amongst artists because we're looking to push sort of boundaries and things, and audiences have their tastes and they have their the things that the audience is looking for, and that kind of goes back a little bit to what I was saying about the way in which we take risks, because I think audience will also notice that we do put a lot of sort of recognizable things on our season, but when they come to see those things, they're also going to see risks taken on stage. If they come to our Man of La Mancha, it will be unlike any production of the Man of La Mancha they've ever seen, for instance. And they may come to plays at our theater that they've never heard of before. So we try to take risks in some way on everything we do.
Well, what you do though, and you explained this to me before, is in a perfect world, and certainly you do this, the ideal is to build a reputation to where they've seen so much of quality. American Stage does this, Job Site does this, Stageworks does this, to where they say, okay, well, the next one I haven't heard of, but I like what they do and I have faith in them. So I want to see if this appeals to me too. That's part of it, right? To kind of get your audience used to your risk taking and know that even if it's a risk, it's going to be a high quality risk. You might like it, you might not, but it'll be cool.
Yeah, you're getting right to the heart of something that's such an important part of how regional theater works, right? We have these subscriptions and we're asking the audience to sort of commit to us to come see everything we do, right? It's like we're asking them to come see this sort of curated season of plays. And at freeFall, in our season selection, we try to have the plays sort of have an interesting conversation with each other across the season, so that it is like if you went to a curated art exhibit, you'd be seeing all sorts of works, and you might see works by various different artists, or depending on what the show is, it may even cross genres, but there's something that ties all of these works together, and they sort of can inform each other or interrogate each other across the season. And that's something we try to do at freeFall, but it's really about that commitment, right? Of like, oh, if you believe in what freeFall does, subscribe to the season, or any theater that you go to. That's what the subscription's about, right? Subscribe to us, support us, give us that influx of money right at the top of this season, so that cash flow spreads throughout the season, as opposed to us like sort of having to open a show and then sell tickets if it's popular, that kind of thing. And that still happens, of course, but those subscribers and the members are really what gives us the ability to sort of take those risks, right? Because they're saying, I'm going to come see whatever you do, and I trust you to do that. So exactly what you're saying there, yeah.
Take us through your process. Was it always your goal to create a theater of your own? I mean, even before you moved to this area, and I wonder what the earliest vision was for freeFall. In other words, what did you want to accomplish? Is it just freedom from the shackles of having to listen to somebody else's bullshit all the time? I don't know what,
I mean, I think there's a little bit of that to it, but I've always, from when I was in high school drama, I wanted to sort of like be able to express myself creatively in that sort of at the helm, if you will. Like when I was a senior in high school, as our drama club president, I decided we needed to have an evening of student directed one acts. And so I grabbed a couple of other students who, had that impulse as well. And we got our drama teacher to give us a little budget, and we, picked 3 short scripts, and we put up this little evening of this little festival of one act. And so I think that impulse was there sort of from the beginnings of me pursuing this as sort of my art form. And I opened another theater actually when I was very young, probably about 21. I opened a theater company in Reno, Nevada, which is where I'm from, that was called the Reno Sparks Group Theater. And we did a couple of shows that were commissioned by the city as kind of a Shakespeare in the Park type thing. And those were very popular, and we were able to we got a nonprofit status, and we got a space that was sort of a warehouse in this sort of warehouse district of Reno, and we ran there for about a year, and it was quite successful and growing. But I sort of was like, well, I don't know that I really want to do, be in Reno forever, because that's where I grew up, and don't we all like? And I'd already sort of gone out and done other workplaces, and I was like, to explore other things, and so I did that. But I sort of think I always knew that I would want to come back to being at the helm of a theater company.
Yeah, it's like once you've been independent in anything, it's got to be hard to sort of go back and say, okay, well, let me support someone else's vision. This is something I always wondered. It was 2011 you bought the building at 6099 Central. The former church, it was Christ the Scientist or something. Anyway, yeah, I've always wondered this. There's a big roomy auditorium there with a stage and what in my memory is a proscenium. I have no idea if it is or not, but you chose to do your shows in one of these back rooms, kind of like a big shed, right?
That's a great
to me, the first thing I thought of, it's sort of like you go out and you buy a big expensive cat bed for your cat. If you have cats, you understand this. And the cat doesn't like the bed, but it loves the box that it came in. So you turned this room into a 150-seat black box theater with changeable seating. I don't know, Eric, did you walk into that room that first day and say, yeah, this is it. This is the theater right here. How did that work, and why? Why was that better?
Yeah, that's a great story, actually. So my partner at the time, Kevin Lane, who has been a member of the board for a long time and was one of the other founders of the theater. We were searching for a space for the theater, and we saw this, we looked all sorts of places, like spaces in strip malls and defunct school buildings and all sorts of things. And
you did a show at the theater at 620 before you had the building, right?
Yeah, we did shows at a couple places. As many theaters sort of get started, right? They rent space around at various things. So we did a show at 620 to start, and then we did a show over at the Straz Center. And then we did a couple other shows at 620, but by then we knew actually we would be moving into the space we're in now. But we drove by that, the Christian Science Church that's on Central Avenue, and it had this, for sale sign on it. And so, we were looking at buildings, and it seemed like, oh, this place is way too big. And so to think of that now is funny, because we feel at a shortage of space at this point. But, we looked at the space, and of course the real estate agent knew we were a theater company seeking space. And she immediately took us into that auditorium room, right?
Right.
As a small stage at one end, and then had seats. And I was so disappointed, because we knew at the time, like, that we wanted this to be a multi-form theater, right? A black box, if you will, a small, I was looking for a 50 by 50 square with no columns, right? With a high or high-ish ceiling. We don't really have the highest ceiling still at freeFall, but a high enough ceiling to do theater, right? And so we went into a room that was a much more traditional, sort of like slightly raked proscenium house, if you will. And it was like a little disappointment of like, okay, well, this could be something, but we'd have to like level the floor and do all this. And it was like, I don't know that this is the place. But then she took on the rest of the tour, and we walked into that room, which was then the Sunday school, and had pink carpeting, pink paint on the walls, and like a drop ceiling. And I was like immediately like, this is it. This is the place.
Okay.
You know what we are? We're in a 50 by 50 square with no columns. And when we took the drop ceiling out and got rid of the pink carpet and pink paint, it's on a high enough ceiling, and it's just a perfect black box after we renovated it.
Would have been cool if I'm sorry if you left the pink carpeting, and that may have been cool too. But I have a photo I want to bring up if I can, if it works. Sometimes it works. Sometimes people who watch the show will know that it doesn't always. Let's try this though. This is Esta Isla es Mía in 20. I hope you can see the picture. I hope it came up. Did it come up? I'm sorry.
I see it. I do see it.
I can't. I don't see anything. I don't know what's going on. 2015, you adapted The Tempest into this show. You play 22 characters. Can you talk about that? This was before we had just moved here. I didn't see this show, but everybody tells me it was incredible. And this is the root of Eric Davis's genius. This seems like a big bite of the theatrical apple, man, to rewrite The Tempest. Tell me what you did. I mean, I've read about it, but I'd like to hear what you have to say about it.
Okay, so there are all these sort of post-colonial interpretations of The Tempest that looks at it sort of through that lens, and I wanted to create a piece that did that in a little bit more overt way than just kind of like, let's present The Tempest and give it sort of a flavor of sort of a colonized island, which of course is what's kind of happening in The Tempest. And so I did a lot of research about that and those connections, both dramaturgically and also sort of the politics of colonialism, and took The Tempest and took much of the text as it is, and but got rid of enough text that I could introduce this sort of parallel story. So it was following the story of this sort of theater professor who was fleeing Cuba and becomes shipwrecked on an island in the Florida Keys and encounters some characters that have some analogs with characters in The Tempest. And it sort of flashed back and forth between me playing all of the characters in The Tempest and me playing all of the characters in the other.
So you did Caliban, you did all that stuff? Wow.
Yeah, and we had a great director for that, an old friend of mine. Well, he's not old, but we've been, well, I guess he is because I am too, but we've been friends for a long time. James Oliver, and he came out here from LA and directed that production and just did a beautiful job and was incredibly patient with me because, especially when you're doing a new play that's a solo work, it was changing even up to opening, and that's just text to cram in your head on top of everything else. So he was so patient and such a great director for that. And some people listening might remember him as he's done many other things than this, but one of his many claims to fame is that he was the barista James on why can't I think of the name of it? The spinoff from Cheers about the
not Frasier.
Frasier, yeah, he was the barista James on Frasier.
Kind of guy with black hair.
For several seasons. Yeah, I don't know what.
I don't remember any of the baristas' names.
I've seen all his episodes, and they
were always in there. Well, when you did the Turn of the Screw in this season, which is called Ghostlight, you played you turned into 5 characters. So what are you slacking off now?
Well, it's funny because I had done another production of The Turn of the Screw quite a few years ago that we took to London, actually, and we did it originally at Stageworks Theaters, so to speak of some of the other great theaters in town. But yeah, I had an experience with this piece actually before The Tempest even, and a connection between those two pieces is some people may recognize the one repurposed set piece from The Tempest design that we used in this. That central platform in the back is the same sort of welded structure from The Tempest. So yeah, I didn't have to play quite as many characters, but I just love this adaptation of The Turn of the Screw as well by Jeff.
Very cool.
Just a fantastic.
It was this opened the season, didn't it? I mean, this was the first one in the Ghostlight season, and Emily Dupre is great, and I think she's going to do one of these shows one of these days, if she's in town. I have no idea, but I have talked to her about it. So we love
Emily at the theater. She played Sally Bowles in our first run of our very successful production of Cabaret.
Yeah, right. And who was the guy? I've read about that. That was pretty neat too. Who is the guy that played the MC though? I hear he was amazing.
That's oh my gosh.
Whoever you are, sorry, because I saw you in Fun Home, an American Stage that Carla directed. Was absolutely amazing actor, but he was also the MC.
It's somebody's gonna tell me in a second. I can't believe I'm terrible with names. I've forgotten my mom's name sometimes.
Hey, Matt, if you're watching, could you text her?
David, forgive me. David Mann. I started to look it up and I didn't even have to.
That's right. I heard that was
on the spot there. I'll never live it down. David Mann. He's amazing. And he also played Tevye in our production of The Fiddler on the Roof. And he was Scrooge for us a couple times in A Christmas Carol. Just an awesome actor and a great person. And we're so lucky to have him as part of this theater community.
What's interesting is you're talking about, well, yeah, we did Fiddler on the Roof. You did MAME or anti-MAME, whichever one that was. And every once in a while you do sort of pull something out. With maybe a little, you adapt it, you make it a little different. And then it'll be The Little Prince with the puppets, or that amazing White Fang that you did with the guy from England.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying, you just said, oh, Fiddler on the Roof. Oh yeah, we do that. We do the sort of standard issue stuff sometime, but it's always got that freeFall stamp on it. Here's another question though, and I want to get in as I'm watching the clock. How key, and you started to answer this before, to what you do, how key is your team? You've got Chris, you got Cheryl, Susan, Matt, you got Tim, and all the others. I mean, do you now feel confident that you can do what you need to do on the creative end, and all the rest of the jazz is taken care of? You got a great team.
Yeah, we have an amazing team, and I couldn't do anything I do, including remember anyone's name, without them.
Did somebody text you that? Is that what happened?
No, I did think of it on my own. Please believe me, David. I apologize, but yeah, I'm sure that they all scampered to tell me that. I'm gonna find all the texts in a minute where everyone's going, David, man, you idiot.
I remember when Chris Crawford came aboard, about a year or so ago, that it was like, it's the first time you've had an associate kind of artistic director, right? Somebody who, was that because were you just so overwhelmed with everything that you do?
No, but we do go sort of, we're always working towards a deadline, and there are just some things that we can do to take the theater to the next level and sort of do some other goals that we want to work on that are outside of just producing the next season, that Chris's work at the theater allows me to do, to share some of those responsibilities that are working against the deadline,
He really is an amazingly talented guy. He's a very funny guy too. Look, right now on the calendar, you've got Marie and Rosetta coming back starting August 12th. Here's my question. If it comes to it, Eric, are you prepared to reduce your capacity to 50% and space everybody in the seats 6 feet apart? I mean, doesn't that kind of put a wrench in the whole theater going experience? Are you prepared if it comes to that?
We've looked at the numbers, and I think we can make it work for something like Marie and Rosetta, because it's already had a full run that was very successful, and it's a two-hander, and we already have all of the stuff to do it. The physical production exists because it's been in its own run, and actually in our theater to follow the guidelines of being 6 feet apart, to have parties 6 feet apart in all directions, I think our capacity would be way less than 50%. So we can probably make that work for something like Marie and Rosetta, but if we're, but we can't for a new piece, even something with like one actor. I think we'd be very pressed to be able to do that. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But
well, I mean, wouldn't the temptation then be to say, screw it, man, let's just wait till this is all over before when we can open at full capacity? I mean,
right. I mean, that's what I'm saying, sort of, is we'll have to see how we could open at full capacity, if we could open at full capacity, and when that'll happen, which of course that will happen. We just don't know when.
Well, which brings me to what will be my last question. Where in the scheduling universe is Oz, which you're writing with Michael, and how far along is it, and what are you thinking these days?
It's definitely going to be part of next season. It was actually, we would be going into rehearsal for it on June 2nd. So
next week.
Right. So, and the pre-production for that, like the in-person pre-production of like building things and all of that, would have had to have started like weeks ago. So we knew a couple of weeks ago that wasn't going to be able to happen this season, but it will definitely be part of next season. So
it's interesting. We've been watching this series called Smash that was actually on 2 years ago about producing a Broadway musical. I don't know if you've seen it. It's based on the Garson Kanin book. But I wondered if you and Michael were like Tom and Julia, who are the composing team, who are writing the musical together. You sit in a room for hours rejecting each other's ideas, crumpling up paper and throwing shit at each other until somebody comes up with something that makes the other one go, that's it. Is that what it's like?
That, for us, at least. We've done our work mostly separately, and we collaborate. Even before we had to do it separately. We work quite separately to begin with, and then run ideas past each other, and then sort of get together to sort of hash certain things out. But yeah, a lot of that can happen not even in the same room.
It's the stereotypical thing. I'm picturing Lerner and Lowe in a room throwing stuff at each other across the room.
Or Rogers and Hammerstein writing Edelweiss and not being able to be in the same room with each other, so they're passing the paper. There's this great story of them just not being able to be in the same room with each other when
wow.
at the point they got to that. And they wrote Edelweiss like passing this could just be legend, but supposedly they were passing papers back under a door between two rooms at each other to get through that.
Well, the bluegrass duo Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs, the last 2 or 3 years they were together, they weren't speaking, and they made, I think, 2 or even 3 albums, Flatt and Scruggs albums, where they weren't in the studio at the same time. They couldn't stand the sight of each other. This is not the note I want to go out on.
No. Dave, Michael and I are definitely not like that. So yeah, we loved collaborating with each other for a really long time, and writing an original show together has been, we've written sort of adaptations and stuff together,
yeah.
But this is like a very original piece that we're, and even though it's Oz and it's sort of based around the world of Oz, it delves a lot more into sort of, L. Frank Baum's relationship to that work, and sort of artists' relationships to their work more in general. I think it's sort of, if people know like Sunday in the Park with George or something like that, or Finding Neverland or something, stylistically it's not at all like either of those pieces, but in the sense that it's sort of an imagined relationship between an artist and their work based on a lot of research, it's more that.
Have you ever written a musical before? You?
Yeah, we've written a few different things. We did the adaptation of Peter Pan that we put in combination with Peter and the Starcatchers. So that was more of a play with music. Yeah. I wrote a musical adaptation of Alice in Wonderland that actually we workshopped at the Straz Center many years ago when I was there, not to be confused with Frank Wildhorn's Wonderland that many years later they took to Broadway. Yeah. What else have Michael and I done? Yeah, we've done a few different things that are in that world, but we've never written like a full-blown sort of.
This is ground up, right? This is start to finish, you guys. But it's based on somebody who was real and had a very, very fertile imagination. So,
but all the play, the book, and all the music and stuff is original in this one.
That's so good. It will definitely be part of the next season. Are you thinking I'll open the season with it? Do you have the next season planned? You just haven't told anybody?
We're working on the final details of that, but Oz will most likely close next season.
Gives you a little time to finish those last couple of numbers. And
also it's just sort of the biggest thing we'll be doing, and so we usually like to use that to sort of go out with a bang.
When are you going to announce? Yeah, do you know? Maybe you don't know the dates yet of the production.
Right, we're sort of waiting to see if and when we have a more solid idea of when we can open, because we've had so many in sort of working through all of this that's going on. We've had to rely on the patience of our patrons with like, well, we're canceling this, and then here's how that's working with your tickets, and then, well, we'll also have to cancel this, and that sort of continues. So rather than announcing some dates, which we may have to modify, we're trying to hold off as long as we possibly can to be able to make a more solid announcement.
Well, it's good to know that, in the world, the St. Petersburg, in the world of St. Petersburg in which we live, that freeFall Theater is still very much a part of it. That's it. I think we're done. We went over a few minutes. Well, I could talk to you all night. Listen, I should tell the folks at home that Mark Ailing, the great sculptor, will be on with us tomorrow, and a co-founder of the Warehouse Arts District and another important part of the St. Petersburg artistic community. Eric Davis, can't thank you enough.
Thanks for having me.
Continued success, and looking forward to being back in that 50 by 50 room very, very soon.
Yeah, we are too.
Yeah, take care, my friend.
Thank you, you too. Bye-bye.
Good night.